Congratulations to The Guardian. You are now 200 years old. Since 1821, you've been writing, editing, and printing the first draft of history. Through the Industrial Revolution, 2 global wars, and the birth of the internet, in over 54,000 editions and roughly 1 billion words. But what of the history of the paper itself? To tell that story, we've got to go back to Monday, the 16th of August in 1819. 60,000 people are gathered in St. Peter's Field in Manchester to demand better political representation. The festive atmosphere quickly turns ugly when a private militia charges into the crowd with sabres drawn. 18 people are killed. 650 are injured. The Guardian wasn't there to report on what became known as the Peterloo Massacre because it didn't exist yet. But 2 years later, having seen the need for a new reformist newspaper, a group of local merchants came together to launch one, the Manchester Guardian, a 4-page weekly created to enforce the principles of civil and religious liberty. In keeping with those ideals, the very first item to appear in The Guardian was... Actually, it was a notice about a lost dog. Obviously, the newspaper had to make money, so back then its front pages were dedicated exclusively to adverts. In 1872, Charles Prestwich Scott became the newspaper's 5th editor, at the age of just 25. He would go on to hold the post for 57 years. Under Scott's stewardship, the Manchester Guardian became a progressive moral force, publishing investigations on housing and health, supporting Irish Home Rule, and opposing the Boer War. Despite its progressive mission, the Manchester Guardian's workforce remained overwhelmingly male in the early 20th century. There were, however, some exceptions. Emily Hobhouse, a campaigner and fierce critic of British foreign policy, provided extensive coverage of conditions in South African concentration camps during the Second Boer War, ultimately forcing the government to take action. In 1913, Madeline Linford joined the paper as an advertising assistant. She later edited The Guardian's first women's page in 1922. Shortly after the death of C.P. Scott, the Scott Trust was formed to take ownership and safeguard the paper's future.
This country is at war with Germany.
During the Blitz, the Manchester Guardian briefly became The Guardian, at least on the front of the building. The Manchester part of the sign was removed in case eagle-eyed German bombers tried to use it for navigation. With the threat of a Nazi invasion looming, emergency plans were made for the paper's potential evacuation to America. But moving money between continents could be difficult in wartime, so the management hatched a daring plan to buy a valuable emerald necklace which could easily be transported. Thankfully, the RAF dissuaded the Nazis from invading, and the jewels were eventually redeemed. Fast forward to 1959, when the newspaper dropped the word Manchester from its title and became The Guardian for good. In 1961, The Guardian started to print copies in London. But the logistics involved in printing in 2 different cities led to an increase in typographical errors, and to privatize long-standing, if now wholly undeserved nickname for the paper, the Groniad. Since that time, the look of the paper has been steadily updated, but across the decades, The Guardian has always stayed true to its liberal roots. Sometimes history repeats itself, and sometimes it takes us places we'd never imagined going. But after 200 years and 12 editors, The Guardian has retained one thing few other papers can claim: its autonomy. So here's wishing a happy 200th birthday to The Guardian, and many happy returns.